and policy is the fourth key role and responsibility of the board. Next in September, we're doing hiring and evaluating the superintendent, which also has implications if you're policy governance. And then monitoring district performance was what we'll do in October. So we're close to completing all of these key responsibilities. And we're going to start and spend some time on the role of policy plays and what the responsibility is as a board member. So ultimately, we have two key definitions here that are really key, that are really important from the policy and legal team. The first is that policy is the big picture rule, the expectations that guide decisions in districts about what should happen and why. Okay, so the what and the why are really key here versus the procedure, which is the step-by-step instructions for carrying out that policy, tells staff how to do the actual work that the policy uh, it indicates that should happen, but how to actually do it in practice. So it's clear that the policies at the board level, which you'll see over there on the right side or the left side of the slide, whichever way you're facing it, that is created, updated, and revised by the board versus the procedures, which are entirely staff and operations. Usually at the soup district level, sometimes schools have their own kind of procedures that, again, are in line with the policy. Dress code would be an example. Sometimes that happens. And then we have the governance model piece, and this is what Carson brought in, when in fact the policy is determining how governance is happening. And so those policies are much more involved, and there's a clear annual review of them. So policy just looks different for those districts. So I want to just outline the key different ways that policy ends up mattering for districts. And I'm going to pass it along to Christine, who's going to talk all about adopting policy and the model policies.
Okay, hi everyone. After actually getting into this, I realized I maybe would have flipped these a little bit. Just all the information is really great. It just I would normally talk about how we get to that. So I'm going to tell you how we make policy after I tell you about the classifications for the policy. Because you're going to see this a lot. And people get confused over this, and we've changed the labels. They're currently critical, important, and discretionary. And I'm sure I could find just as many people who like that versus think it's a terrible way of classifying them and has something else in mind. But what we mean by it is the following. All of the hundreds of model policies we have, we break into three buckets: the critical, the important, and the discretionary. Critical and important are both things you need to probably have addressed somewhere in your own policy for your district. However, critical are the policies that are either ordered, you must have them, the legislature says this is it, you must have this policy, or they are somehow tied to funding. And so if you don't have it, you're going to lose funding or you're in direct violation of the law. So anything under critical is absolutely necessary. Now, does it mean word for word? Absolutely not. And there will be one exception to that, which I'll get to in a moment. But generally, when you think about the WASDA model policies, think about it like you go to the library. You walk up and you go into the section that you want of the library, and you might pull it out and say, not this one. I'm going to write my own on that one, but this one I like. What we create at WASDA are templates. They are not meant to be able to address the 295 different things that different districts may want in their own community. What we do is give the base template that will keep your district safe. If you adopt it as is, you have some legal protection. You're then able, however, to tweak it, to put in different words, to add a little bit to your procedure, to move things around. That is always upon the district and always your right to do that. But since I can't write a policy that would please Seattle and Walla Walla and Bellevue and Spokane, it's up to the district level, and we'll get to that in a little more detail in a moment, to actually fine tune any of the WASDA policies for your own needs. So the most important are obviously the critical. You must absolutely by law have something in your library that looks like that. Example of this would be probably Title IX, things, the laws that are actually coming down as laws that you must have. The difference in an important policy, it may be just as important. For example, student boundaries, teacher-student boundaries. I pulled up one here. Searches of students and student privacy. Very important. You really need to have these. The only difference is they're not tied directly to funding, and you haven't been ordered to absolutely, you must have this policy by this number. That's the difference. It's still an important subject. Important case law, the things we base the important part of it on is not only law, although it is law, as you can see here, it also has to do with case findings. For example, I'm sure you remember in Bellingham, not, was it Bellingham? No, no, no. Was it in Kitsap or somewhere around there? There was the coach who was praying at the midline.
Bremerton.
Bremerton. I knew it was a B. I was thinking Bellingham, Bremerton. When that case law came out, although it's very narrow, some districts felt that they now needed to tweak their policies a little to be in line with case law. Audits happen, and the results of the audits may be something that needs to be taken into your policies and put in some way of handling a financial situation. So important doesn't mean you don't need it. There's critical, absolutely tied to the law, must have it. Important, I'm going to say is in turn, you absolutely have to address these issues. Whether you take ours or not is up to you. And then finally, you have discretionary. Discretionary doesn't mean there's no use to them, but there's no law ordering you to have it, and there's no pressing concern that you must. Now, this changes. Different rules come out every single year. The wisdom of our legislature comes to bear, and they may change their mind on things. For example, right now, WASDA has a very antiquated, old-fashioned kind of thing talking before everyone had a smartphone. That's what it was talking, some sort of telecommunications policy. But we didn't have to come up with a policy because 75% of our districts have already determined for themselves if they want a cell phone policy, and those that do have quite easily been able to, based on their own community, come up with a cell phone policy. However, this year we got from our legislature that there will be upcoming a cell phone policy from the top down. And what OSPI is being ordered to do the work into it and come up with their conclusions. And WASDA has been ordered to take those conclusions and make them into our policy. That's not the normal way we do things. And the school districts are probably going to be ordered to have a policy like this. So normally this is correct. And this is the way you can think about it, but I want you to know that things change and something that was once discretionary can move, and we regularly update these areas. Without getting into it, just to, as my grandfather used to say, getting to the point of the disgusting about it, this is basically the overview. After, if you had any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but I think this is probably enough for now. We can probably go to the next slide.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good. So I'm going to let Kelsey take this. Kelsey is the person, I obviously take emails and calls and do my part of the job, but Kelsey is the person who deals most directly with all of your districts. She is the one who goes in, uploads policy, makes changes to policy. So I'm going to turn it over to her and let her explain to you some of the things that she does also here at WASDA.
Thank you. So this is a really important visual I think districts should have to see what is included in our model policy services. WASDA provides two services. There's the model policy online library, which is WASDA's entire policy manual. You can see that it's divided into 6 series, and each series has its own bucket of what pertains to that individual series. I think this is especially an important visual because districts can then see how they want to tackle their policies when they adopt, revise, or even retire. But also, I think it's important to see these because in the 2000 and the 3000 series, most of those policies actually fall into our critical classification. So it was it was nice information to have before we were able to actually see what's in these series. And so when districts want to prioritize their policies when it comes to adopting and revising, they tend to usually look to the 2000 and 3000 series, and then following the 1000 series, which pertains mostly to board governance. And this is all in our model policy online library. We also offer another service, which is our policy and legal news. This is a quarterly issue that comes out, and it has all of the policy revisions, anything that's pressing in our current climate, or any brand new legal updates. And then we have one that's coming out in July currently, which will be a really hefty issue. Those usually pertain to our legislative updates. These are critical for districts. These issues, boards rely on it, the superintendent rely on, the EAs really rely on them. This gives all of the information for boards to be able to make a solid decision with ample timing in a digestible rate, so that they can have the information right in front of them. They see what clear changes were made, they get a clean copy as well, and they also have all of the legal backing of what is causing these revisions as well. And so I always tell districts that if they're not signed up for these services, they might want to look into it. And also, anyone at the district staff who really needs to get into policy work, they can always reach out to our IT support or to myself, and we would always walk them through to signing up for these services. Or if you even just need a policy, or what happened, or where did this language come from, I always, please reach out to me. I'm always willing to help, and I can hopefully find something quickly for you in a reasonable amount of time. Sometimes they require a lot more because sometimes I'm not sure where that language came from, but these are really great resources that WSSDA provides so that districts can make really good decisions on behalf of their policy making.
And I would say it's often the EA, as you mentioned, Kelsey. It's often an EA and the superintendent who knows when to review these. They become a part of your agenda on for your board meeting. And so some you consistently review every year, and some you're reviewing because, as Christine said, the law demands that you do because there needs to be changes. So there's somebody who kind of owns that, but asking questions about it is a really important role of the board to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to, and then entering that discussion with curiosity, interest is great. Good to go to the next one, friends. Oops.
Is that?
Is that right?
There we go.
Sorry.
I hate to say that because, this is obviously my whole area, but one of the things that's obviously getting traction, for better or for worse, this is one of those areas where you could get your ear bent a little bit by the people in your community. I want to give you all an overview because I think this is important to know. And this is a really good chart. I mean, it's really helping. I'm going to even simplify it even more so you don't feel like you have to take notes. Essentially, we just finished a session, right? From January, the short sessions, long sessions. At the end of those sessions, anything that hits K-12 is going to be looked at for making either new policy or revising a policy that already exists. And that's just from the legislature. Obviously, WASDA has nothing to do with controlling the legislature, but in our RCW, the law that founded us, one of our areas is creating policy. So regardless of whether we're ordered to do it, in particular, like on some one law that they want us to have a policy on, it's kind of redundant because we do it anyway. It's just kind of the legislator showboating a little bit and saying, hey, we want you to make a policy. It's like, yeah, we know that. That's why we've been here for over 100 years doing that. So that is just something we do. And what we do is, like I've already alluded to, we take that, we have a cadre of attorneys. We use multiple law firms, all part of the Washington. They're all in good standing with the Washington Bar. They're all education attorneys. And the reason for that is some of these policies range just, I was a school teacher, I was a chair, I've been an HR director. So, I kind of have that background. But what I'd like to say is, so I understand the complexities of trying to take this law and make it fit into the school district. We have no control. If you want to try to make changes at that level, that's you as a citizen, that's your district. Get in there, line up, speak up, do that. But once the laws come, we are now charged with simply creating a policy and usually a procedure that is kind of just a sample, so to speak, that could be used by any of our districts and then tweaked. So it's a three-step process. We get the law, we send it out to our cadre because, like I was saying, the width of the everything from tree cutting to how audits are done to what's happening in isolation and restraint in the classroom. So there's really no way one attorney would ever have that subject matter with. It just doesn't, like you wouldn't go to an eye doctor for your foot. You don't go to the student person to talk about the tree law. So we have a wide group of people that we vet and we use to do this. We send them the law, they bring us back policy, we review it, and then we upload it to our library. And that's essentially what happens. The third part, which often gets lost, is then you pick the ones you need when you're going through your own policy, see what we have, what you have in comparison, and then you can take those and you're meant to be able to modify them to suit your district in whatever way that means. Now, some districts go a little too far and then they're advised, well, you're outside the law on this. Is that a possibility? Of course it is. But that's what you work out. You're meant to do it with your own attorney at the district level. Or if you don't have the funding or the desire to go into that, if you just took our template, you should be in pretty good standing, even without tweaking it. So that's what we're kind of semi-guaranteeing is we're giving you coverage from lawsuits. We're giving you coverage from bad laws, so you don't have to worry about that and can just get on with everything else. And I often say you're going to have people get very mad at you about some of these policies, but all I can say about that is if somebody really likes the law, they'll like the policy probably. And if they despise this law, they're going to probably despise the policy. But we are very neutral in it here. My personal views do not come into it. It's literally the creation of the template. So I just wanted to get that through before we go over these little bullets because it's a three-part process. And I think it's very important to keep that in mind of where the impact can best occur. I'm not going to go into it now, but we have started a program where we are allowing, we put policies out, brand new policies for our membership to be able to come back in and vet them a little bit and give suggestions. And then if we can incorporate those into the new policy, we will. And that's something new we're working on. So I just want you to know there's lots of ways that you both as all as directors, but also as citizens can impact this from top to bottom. So policy and legal news, it really should be legal newsletter. I'm starting to think this is getting confusing, but it's a newsletter and it's streamlined and it comes out quarterly or even more if necessary. The one that's coming out in July is all the new laws that came out that had to be created in the policy. So you have it all in one place, everything that's new, plus anything that touched on then just new things and now had to be modified. So there'll be over 40 policies in this newsletter coming out in July that you can use. And something that Kelsey alluded to a little bit, when you go into libraries and you scroll, you can see when things were modified. You can see when they were changed. You can see there's so much information that we have beyond just the wording of the policies. But the policy and legal news is probably one of the best ways of just keeping up and getting a copy of that. It's all online. It's easy to use. We reformatted it to make, take out all the superfluous things and it's just policy with explanations. And so that's something you can use in the big ones coming out for the new school year in July, about the second week of July. Model policies and procedures, I think I pretty much covered that. Okay, we have oath of office there. And I kind of laugh because I'm always expecting the huge controversies. I thought restraint and isolation. Now everyone's head was going to explode when the new policy came out. And instead, I was completely wrong. Everyone just got it and ran with it and knew what they were doing. Oath of office. Oath of office blew up on me. And I had no idea. So I just say that because I was wrong about where the controversies were. And sometimes you will be too, and sometimes you will be right. And something as simple as an oath of office kind of blew up because there was a new section added to it that said not only that you will follow federal and state law when you swear in. And I thought, well, obviously that's the oath, but that was not the way people saw it. So the surprises come from many directions, and it really helps if I don't expect all of you to go and run off and become policy experts, but familiarizing yourself with what's there, looking over the policy and legal newsletter and understand the new stuff that's coming out and how it's impacting your districts, that's kind of one of the baselines I would think you would need to have, because you will be confronted over something that you didn't even see coming. But if you read the newsletter, you will have seen it coming. So I'm not too worried. Everyone here is going to know what to do. I'm going to move it on to Kelsey, and she can tell you about the next two.
Sure. So we have a featured policies page on our WSSDA website. This is basically a page where any of our districts or our partners that need to have a policy that's usually required, or one that we know is on high alert, or something that we know is pressing in time that districts need to grab. That's a landing page on our website. It's really great to have for districts just to drop in real quick and grab a policy so they don't have to contact us for that policy that they need currently. So I always suggest people just take a look at it, and we always keep them up to date. If we have any revisions that come through, we always make sure that they're uploaded onto that webpage so that districts can have the most current version. And then I didn't see we put policy manual review services at the end. Oh boy, I could talk about that all day because I love looking at policy. So I'll try to keep it high level. But we have policy manual review services, and we have a consultant, which is me. I am your consultant for policy manual review services. Um, we're aware. I can't imagine what it's like for districts. I mean, right now there's so many things coming at us all the time. It is just a constant turnover and revising our policies. I mean, the load that we even have here, I can't imagine what it's like to keep that up to date at the district level. And so we have this beautiful service that we offer to our districts. We have a web page that you can look at to get a higher level view of it, but and also submit a request. We have a request that you land in a queue, but we are a quick turnover for that queue. This service, what it is districts, you need to stay on top of your policies, and sometimes you just fall behind. Things take priority. It is what it is. And so districts will reach out to me when they're in need of updating their policies in a quick amount of time. I offer different links. It's a contractual service with me. I offer different lengths, anywhere from 6 months to 24 months. It's all based on services. We've tried to expand it because the need for these services and what and how quick and what they actually need, it's all circumstantial. Every district is at a different level and they all need different things. So we offer a partial service, which is per series or a group of series. We have just critical, which is all the critical classified policies, and then also a full policy manual review. These involve an entire edit of those selected services for that contracted timeline. And I go in and I work in Microsoft Word and do track changes. You can see every single thing that I do, and I give it to you in a shared drive, and we work together. This is a collaborative team event. You can pull as many people at the district level that need to work on these policies as well, and we work through it in that time together. I also include an overall summary of it as well, so that you have this legal basis for all of these revisions as well. I put comments so that you know where this language came from, if it's best practice, if it's just strictly district language. Sometimes district language with the laws changing so often, sometimes that becomes outdated. So I'll just make sure that you note it, that this came from the district. You might want to review it, but it's a whole over overview summary that I provide with each one, and we work through it together. And then at the end, you have all of your policies up to date. And you can put them into a PDF and put them on your website and take a breath. And it's a great service. It's to me, it's fun. But I'm sure it's not the most fun for districts, but it's a great collaborative effort that we make together, and the end result is extremely important and very impactful for the district.
I just wanted to add, I probably date myself here, but we have everything. If you're sitting there with online policies, you're already ahead of the game.
Yeah.
There are a few districts that I will not name names, but all their policies were on post-it notes stuck to a wall on in an office because they always intended to get to it, but they just couldn't. And so this was what happened. I worked in a district where I'm dating myself pre-computer, pre online. There was no such thing really as online back then. And it was just a giant, giant ring binder. And you'd pop it open and occasionally pages would just go flying out. And you were just like, okay, guess that wasn't too important, and just shove the new one in and fold it and stick it on the thing, and that's how we handle it. So fortunately, we're way beyond that. And I say, we're make a joke about it, and everyone knows it's important. We give lip service to it, but the truth of the matter is sometimes you will never think about your policies very much. They're there, you go along, everyone's doing it the way they've always done it. But when something happens in your district, and inevitably every district has that thing that happens, the first thing they're going to do is look to see what your policy was and then look to see if you were following your policy. And I worked at OSPI for a while in probably the one part they don't like to talk about, which is teacher discipline and administrative discipline. I worked in the Office of Professional Practices. And that's one of the first thing when I would review these investigations, they looked at those policies. That was the first thing in the report every time. So you don't need them until you really need them, so to speak. Everything just floats along well until you get hit with something. So that's when Kelsey's saying you can, by looking at those series and which are the ones with the most critical or the most important policies, you can say, you know what, we're going to hit this series this year for a rewrite because the rest is discretionary and this we know is important. It's just another, all these are just tools to help you identify where you're lacking and where you should be, building up a little bit. So there's a lot there. And when you're in doubt, you can give us a call, send us an email. We're always here to, even if it's back issues of policy and legal news, we can sometimes do that for you. We can put our hands on them so you can understand how you got to where you were. Because sometimes that's the question. We want to change it, but we don't even know why we have this. And we have all that information for you. So this is not only a department that creates the policy, we're the department that absolutely helps you utilize the policy.
Thanks to both of you. Super, super helpful. I'm going to stop here to see if there's any questions to make sure that we have time for that. And then I'll talk a little bit about an example of this in practice and get some insight from our team. Any questions from the folks here? Pretty clear, beautifully explained. Nice work. Excellent. And so one way to think about this is one of the responsibilities boards have is adopting the curriculum. And that is governed by both law and a model policy to support you. So I just want to walk through one of those things and see how policy interacts with that basic practice you're supposed to do. So by law, right, a school board will establish district curriculum standards consistent with law and rules of the superintendent of public instruction. Okay, so this is what the law is telling us. State the school district's goals relative to instructional material. Establish an instructional materials committee, and then recommendation of instructional materials shall be by the district's instructional materials committee in accordance with district policy. Approval or disapproval shall be the local school district's board of directors. So we can see explicitly, and I think the law's on there, right? From the RCWs, we see them right there. This is how the law dictates how curriculum adoption happens. You'll see that the role of the board is key at the very end, but that there's these other things that are meant to happen. So it's guided by model policy, and that's written there, 2020. Course design, selection, and adoption of instructional materials. So the board ensures that the vision and goals around the curriculum adoption process are documented in policy as a foundation. So you make sure that your curriculum adoption policy is in line with the model policy and lawful, right? So that's a really key role of the board. You then ensure that the instructional materials committee is established and that it meets regularly, right? Now, there can be board involvement on those committees. It depends on what the practices are at the local board, but usually these are experts, right? Because board members are not actually curriculum experts usually. And so it's really key to have practitioners, curriculum experts, district staff, and community weighing in on that committee. Okay, so the board is making sure the committee is happening per policy, but it's not the committee making a decision. And that distinction is really key, that you understand you're kind of making sure the policy is happening and that it's being followed, but you're not explicitly doing it. That's that governance piece instead of operations. And then the board is ensuring that the parameters around the requirements in specific curriculum areas, budgeting constraints, et cetera, are being well understood. So the superintendent is making decisions that are grounded in the strategic plan and within the fiscal possibilities of the district, right? So that we're not making curriculum decisions that are way outside of what the district can actually afford, or that are way outside of what the strategic plan is focused on, right? So we're asking clarifying questions, right? We're finding out about how expensive things are. We're making sure that alignment is happening between the goals and the budget. That's again at the governance level. And then we're providing the cultural support to allow for productive discussions and evaluation of curriculum options that center student needs. So we're just, again, posing a question, how does this mean? What does this mean for students? Making sure that community feels like they have a voice in it, because curriculum adoption is one of those things that can erode public trust if they don't feel like they have a voice in it, right? So the board is asking, have we gotten community input? Let's make sure we're hearing from everyone. You're not explicitly saying the community said this, right? But you're asking about the process and making sure that it's involving everyone. So the distinction here, we want to kind of offer this example as a way to see that the board still plays a key role and is not doing the actual action of deciding the curriculum. But you're really key in creating all of the situations so that it's all within the law and following the policy. Any questions on that example and anything to add to that, Kelsey or Christine? Does that track for you?
It does. Okay.
Awesome. So we recommend a few things. Do one of you want to talk about this, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I mean, we always say you should absolutely go through your policies, and we do them here. We go through our own policies, operating policies here. We take once a year, like during the year, we take a different series and go through it. So that's something everyone should be doing it. You should be able to step right in as new directors and see where you are and where that's happening. And if it's not happening, then it should be happening. If you're on a board where it's not being reviewed regularly, you need to ask why, because you need to keep them up to date. Just the fact that one edition of our newsletter alone is going to have about 40 different updates on policies just gives you an idea how constantly this is happening and how often they need to be tweaked. Same thing with the calendar. If you put it on the calendar, that's how it gets done. That's only a we would get it done, because it's, some of them are quick and easy, and you're always happy when you see those, and some of them are real dogs, and some of these laws are written in a way that you can't believe this was actually, that this is supposedly someone with a high IQ writing this thing. It makes it very hard sometimes to create a nice, clean policy when the law itself is kind of muddy. So there's a lot of challenges, and I don't even pretend we come out absolutely perfectly and land it every time. And yesterday was actually my 2 years here at this office. And at this point in time, I finally kind of think I understand what's going on. And we're going back to policies from the last few years that confused me, but I was new and wasn't so sure about my role in this. And now I realize, oh no, they're not great policies. They need to be updated. So we're constantly reviewing our own work too. It's not just like throwing it out on the districts. We're constantly trying to improve our own policies in-house. And as we've already said multiple times, there will be in about 2 weeks, all the new legislation will be in policy form and that'll be coming out in the newsletter. If you're not sure if you get that, you should contact us and we'll see what the deal is.
Thanks for sharing that link, Ratsmi. Yeah, Kelsey.
Something I wanted to add too is, even though we keep touching base on the policy and legal news that's coming out in July, one that I would like to always kind of give a little plug for because we have a mentioning here to have a calendar for when your policies should be reviewed. We started including in our December policy and legal news an entire wrap up of the year. So if you miss anything from January to December, we include an entire this is what the last year has looked like, and here's a spreadsheet and what classification is, and this is the policy number, and hopefully this can be an easier way to put those policies on the calendar and to track them in an easier manner moving forward.
Mm-hmm. It's so great that you do that, Kelsey. It was really born out of requests, right, from districts to have that. So it's a great example of being responsive to district needs. Wonderful. So we're now at the place if there's just any other questions. I already left space for that. So are there any questions from folks, or is this making sense and the role of policies clear? Awesome.
One, if you
Zach,
don't mind, please. Thanks. Sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand in this thing.
you're doing
So I
great.
apologize. First of all, thank you all so much. This is awesome, and I appreciate it. And it's not related. It's slightly related to what you're saying, but just more of a mentorship moment, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
We're having a lot of discussions in our work studies and stuff, just advocacy in general. So this is kind of the reverse flow of what you're doing, which again, you guys do such an amazing job, and pretty much we just take, I can tell, and adopt your policies almost word for word every time. So thank you for taking that off of us. But if what does advocacy look like in the opposite flow, just from your time with WSSDA? So I know our superintendents have their sort of chains that they can work through if there's things that they think or would hope that we could change at the legislative level. The unions do as well. Is our flow potentially through you guys and then working with other school districts if we're facing similar challenges and things that we would want to advocate for at the legislative level to sort of build a coalition? How do you feel WSSDA fits into that? A, does the question make sense? And then B, it's just sort of, just a mentorship moment, if you don't mind.
Yeah. I'm happy to take that if you want, or Christine, if you have an immediate response, you can share.
I was going to say, that's something Logan asked, but.
Yeah, exactly. Logan just left, but it's exactly what Logan would do. So he is the director of advocacy. So right now I'm the director of leadership development. Christine's the director of policy and legal, and Logan, our colleague, is a director of advocacy, strategic
Perfect.
advocacy.
Okay.
And he aligns, there's an entire webpage and a great toolkit that actually, Ratsumi, if you have a second, if you could throw that in the chat, that'd be great. And it talks about approaches to building relationships with legislators, staying up on what's going on during the legislative session. And then WSSDA ends up weighing in, and school board members weigh in on all kinds of hearings as policy or as laws actually being heard. And so the board member perspective is really valuable. When WSSDA organizes it, they really love hearing from board members as well, so that they'll help you with the talking points so that it's in alignment with what the priorities are that the members have adopted from WSSDA. Sometimes, though, it's a local concern so that districts in a particular area come together and determine how they want to weigh in. And then you can say, if you take action as a board, right, then you can say Tahoma School District says this, right? Tahoma School District, the board says this in alignment with these other 4 districts. And that can be, sometimes it's with superintendents as well. So I think a lot of connection, collaboration happens, particularly around funding and unfunded mandates and all kinds of other things. And so in session, the Advocacy Action Network is happening all year round, and that is on Tuesdays once a month at the same time from noon to 1. And then During session, there's the in session, and that happens weekly. And then there's also a publication each week that kind of updates you on where tracking bills to see kind of when one's being heard or when you can advocate or speak about it from your perspective as a individual board member if your board hasn't taken action, or as a board if they have. I hope does that make sense, Zach?
It's tons of, yeah, it gives me a bunch of places to look at as well. So thank you. It does. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love about this is that actually that is what so Christine said, if you don't like the if you don't like the law, right, you probably won't like the policy. Ultimately, doing what you just asked is the way to modify or change or have legislators hear from the district's perspective and the board's perspective on why a law is not actually helping districts or why it's problematic. So advocating is the way to get that. Advocating to us around the policy isn't going to fix the law, right? Advocating to legislators is. So you're right to ask it, and it's the next step if something's amiss with a model policy. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, Christine?
No, I was just gonna say, Logan is just an amazing person because you can imagine being up on the hill, all the personalities, and he absolutely, I just slays it. He has the right personality to get. Then you listen to me, and I'm like, they're all a bunch of whatever. So, even within the same house, we have slightly different perspectives on how we're dealing with it. But honestly, probably he has the much better perspective, and playing nice gets you, you get more with honey than vinegar, I suppose. But, I just deal with the fallout of how do I make this into a policy? But if you really, really want to change things, you work up at the level that Logan's working at. And I'm sure he has a lot going on to bring everyone into that.
Yeah, so the toolkit gives you some skills and a sense of how to approach doing that. And now is a great time during the summer months to start to build relationships with your local legislators so that then when they are, advocating for a bill that is, counter to what makes sense for your district, you already know that person and can let them know directly. So that's one of the things I know he says that you can immediately get started on now.
Well, I always find that shockingly, they are human beings and
Yeah.
they appreciate, the relationships not just when we want them and need them to do something for us, but year round
Mhm.
to foster those relationships gets you a lot farther than just showing up, with your hat in hand when the time comes. So you're absolutely thinking the right way about this.
Excellent. Anyone else before we move along? It was a great question, Zach. Thank you. And thanks, Ratsmi, for throwing that advocacy link there. And from there, you can see a lot of the strategies. Um, yeah, absolutely. So just know our next newsletter, the newsletters will continue throughout the summer, but our network meetings won't because we appreciate that y'all are on vacation and doing stuff, which we're here for. Yay, take it. But we will continue with the newsletters that come out at the first of every month. So July 1st. Yeah, you'll see some information on from the field and one of our consultants sharing their input and some other resources to look out for and some dates. And then we already said there's no meetings. And then just keep in mind at annual conference, the registration has opened. We hope that we'll see you there. We are going to have a new director reception with drinks and snacks and Leadership WASDA, kind of experienced board members have been invited as well. So the goal is to have, experienced leaders in your field and new folks finishing your first year, kind of coming together to network and get to know one another. So we hope you'll join us for that during annual conference in Spokane. And then we do have a training. I know that Carson, you joined us for our virtual one, so we won't expect to see you, but they're in person this time. So every February we have trainings, required equity training and finance training, virtually in February. And then every summer we have them in person for our Leadership Academy. This year we're adding being a board chair. So if you're in a district where even though you're new, you've been asked to be a board chair or that might be coming for you in the future, this this is a really great session to join. That comes with a full workbook to support you through all the different needs and expectations. And then we also have that equity required equity training Friday afternoon and Saturday morning. If you want to stay over, there's a room block if you want to be near Lacey. And then deciphering the district budget is always really important. So it gives you a overall scope of what that summary budget even looks like and what your role is in supporting oversight. So I'm going to stop there because we're about at time. Are there any other questions from anyone else or thoughts?
There's a question in the chat from Carson. How long are you considered a new director?
I love that question. I just heard from our ED that it was not until the end of her first term, which is 4 years in, that she felt like she had her bearings and understood what their role was. But technically, we understand your first year as a really important time of making sense of because really the work happens annually or biannually, like, right? Some things it takes a long time really for some of the work to happen because you only meet monthly, sometimes twice a month. So it's just the first year, the first 2 years are really still getting your feet wet with clarity. We provide supports for the first year, but always we're here to support you. And if you get started on and off, like you're not in November because you were appointed or something like that, however long makes sense. But until you know what you're doing, you can call yourself new. But again, what's fun about it is that there's always space to learn something new, right? So once you get your bearings around what you're actually the logistics of the work and Robert's rules and making motions and all those things so that you are contributing from a governance perspective, there's all the ledge rep information, and there's serving on the WSDA board, there's leading in a committee, there's providing insight in another way, there's joining a strategic plan committee for your district. There's always something new happening in districts so that the need for leadership and stepping into learning something new and providing a governance lens is always there as a board member. So folks who've been serving for 20 years are still learning like new work because the world is changing, for instance, around cell phones or AI, right? And so there's always needs to learn something new and engage. Great question, Carson. Did I answer your question? Perfect. Thanks, Ratsumi, for sharing those details for folks. Christine and Kelsey, thank you so much for joining. I know there aren't a lot of people in this room, but this is recorded. So just the way that you explain model policy, the role that policy plays, I think it's going to be really valuable for folks who weren't able to join us. So we appreciate everyone's time and wish you all just a fantastic summer.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, y'all, for your time. Take care.